All right. I don't know that we're live. I do see that it says live. We'll hope. But I am attorney Samantha Holloway of the Atlanta Divorce and Custody Law Firm. And I have two other ladies with our firm who are going to introduce themselves. Today, we are talking about the latest and most talked about court case. There was an order issued in our home county, I guess, Fulton County here in Atlanta, where the actor Tyrese Gibson was ordered to pay $636,000 in back child support and attorney's fees. And we want to talk about what happens in contempt cases and why something like this could be ordered. So again, I'm attorney Samantha Holloway, and next I'll have attorney Reed introduce herself.
Hi, I'm attorney Shani Reed. I'm the associate attorney here at the firm, and I am happy to be of assistance.
All right. And we have our firm administrator, Tiffany Bell.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Bell, and I'm the firm administrator here at the Atlanta Divorce and Custody Law Firm. And I think this is going to be a great discussion about this case. So I'm going to give a little bit of background. Tyrese and his wife, Samantha.
Not me.
Not this Samantha, but
Just to make it clear.
Samantha. Were divorced in Georgia. And I never knew they lived in Georgia, which was new to me when I heard the divorce was filed. I thought they lived in California, but apparently they lived in Georgia. They lived in the Atlanta area in Buckhead, which is a more upscale area of Atlanta. Tyrese's wife filed for divorce in 2020, kind of during the pandemic. They kind of extended the litigation. And so she asked for child support. She asked for alimony. She asked for attorney's fees. She asked for division of some property they had. I know it was 2 cars, and I think it was some houses as well. Well, they had a hearing in August of 2022 in front of Judge Farmer in Fulton County Superior Court. And he ruled that Tyrese had to pay child support, a portion of her attorney's fees, no alimony, and then give her some property, and then they would share custody of the children. Now, one thing I looked up today, which I thought was unusual about the case, is that in 2022, Judge Farmer ordered Tyrese to pay $10,000 in child support, but he made it retroactive to the date she filed divorce. So he started behind. He had to pay a lump sum of about $200,000 for the 2 years that the case had been pending. He did give Tyrese credit for paying her car note during that period of time. So it went down to $164,000 that he had to pay in a lump sum to begin. So he kind of began behind because all while the case was pending, he was supposed to pay child support. And then he had to pay $10,000 going forward. Well, Tyrese did not pay. I made some sums based on my research, but he did not pay the $10,000. Her attorneys filed for contempt. They were awarded it yesterday, $236,000 in child support, over $400,000 in attorney's fees. What I can't figure out, because we haven't seen the order, is if the attorney's fees is for the life of the case or just for this contempt. But it's $400,000 that he owes in attorney's fees. Tyrese has gone on live a lot about this case, and we'll kind of delve into that. And he issued a statement this afternoon that he's going to appeal the award of the attorney's fees and the back child support. So we will be back to talk about Tyrese, obviously, because he's clearly not going to let this go. So I want to just talk to you guys about and kind of tell people, like, what is contempt, or how do you become in contempt, and what kind of does that entail?
So first, before we kind of get into that, I do want people to know that we did not represent Tyrese. So we did not represent him. We did not represent the other party. We were not in court. We don't have access to the court documents. We are making assumptions or statements based off of what our experience has been in these types of cases, our experience before this particular judge, and what typically happens in contempt cases and things of that nature. The other thing is, we are not creating any sort of attorney-client relationship with this, and nothing should be considered legal advice that we are giving to you all. Again, we're just talking about this case and why this probably was ordered, and what typically happens in contempt cases, at least in Fulton County, Georgia. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure I added that in before we really got deep into it. So Tiffany's question was kind of what is contempt and how that happens. Shawnee, do you want to take that on, or do you want me to take it on?
I'll let you start.
Okay. So basically, a contempt is that there was a previous order from the judge, and it was an order to do something. It could be to turn over a car, it could be to pay child support, it could be to pay attorney's fees, but there was some sort of order from the judge. And the judge most likely entered that order after hearing all the evidence as to, let's go in an example of child support. The judge probably heard testimony from Tyrese about how much he makes and what he thinks the child support should be. Then the judge probably heard some testimony or evidence from the mom, excuse me, of what she thinks the child support should be and how much income she makes. And so the judge then reached a decision, and that decision could have been the $10,000 a month. And the judge puts it in an order, and the judge will tell you when it's supposed to start and when it's supposed to stop. And so whenever there is an order for child support or anything like that, if you don't comply with the order really strictly, and that means you have to do exactly what it says, then the other side may go ahead and file a contempt, which is basically that person is not doing what the order said. And the reason that I say you have to do it strictly, I think I read somewhere that Tyrese was making child support payments. I think it was a little over $2,000 a month. Mm-hmm. But as Tiffany stated, the court had ordered him to pay a little bit over $10,000. Mm-hmm. So even though he had been making some strides to it, he wasn't making the full amount. He wasn't following that letter to the T of what the order says. And so that's a reason why someone could file a contempt case. But that's essentially what a contempt is. The judge ordered you to do something and you didn't do it. And the other person comes back to court and asks the judge, and tells the judge, this person didn't do what you said they were supposed to do, and I need you to make them really do it. So a lot of times the penalty, if you're held in contempt, is obviously you have to do what the judge initially ordered you to do, which was to resume paying the child support. But some of those penalties could be you have to pay the other person's attorney's fees for having to bring this case into court, or even someone may go to jail. That's a very real penalty for being held in contempt. You can be incarcerated. You could also be ordered to pay a fine. So I don't know, like Tiffany said, we don't know if the attorney's fees is just for the contempt or for the life of the case, but an award of attorney's fees making you pay is definitely a penalty for contempt.
And one thing I want to add to what Samantha said, a lot of times people go to court and they don't have an attorney. And so something that you talked about is strictly understanding the order. And that's why you could call our firm. You can have a consultation with Attorney Holloway or Attorney Reed if you don't understand your order. So say you went to court by yourself, the judge gave you an order. It's usually pages long. A lot of people don't really read it and understand it. So if you have a question about your order, even if you did not have an attorney at the time, you're going to still be held to the same standard. Like you're going to have to still strictly comply, like Attorney Holloway said. So if you have any questions about your order, instead of going on your own and try to figure it out, that's when you call an attorney. Because even in our firm, we have a option for you just to do a document review. You can pay a fee. Attorney Holloway, Attorney Reed can read it for you and explain it to you if you don't understand. Because a lot of people don't understand the legalese, and divorces are emotional, and people are just happy to be divorced. And they don't think about the sheet of paper and what the sheet of paper says. So that's just something people think, oh, I didn't have an attorney in my divorce. But you at any point can get an attorney to look at your documents to kind of help you through. I just wanted to add that.
So one of the things that I noticed, because there's a lot of chatter online about how did you get to $636,000? And so like Tiffany said, there was a portion of it that was for back child support. There's a portion of it for attorney's fees. And, I've seen the outrage online for both. Why should someone have to pay $10,000 a month? How did you get to the over $200,000 that's owed? And then I've seen the arguments of she should be responsible for her own attorney's fees. Attorney Reed, Shawnee, I want to ask you this, because how does someone get to owing? Well, back up. How do you get to $10,000 a month in child support? And in your experience that you've seen in cases, is that a common number that's issued? And if why would a judge order $10,000 a month?
That's a great question. So, in my research of the case, one thing they were able to prove was that in 2018, Tyrese made $2 million. His allegations and are that his previous spouse made between $10,000 a month and $150,000 a year, which is about $12,000 a month. So he alleged that she made slightly more than what she claimed. And of course, I'm sure that she was alleging, and I'm saying I'm sure she's alleging because I'm taking from his statements. He probably alleged that he was not making $2 million a year. It's notable that this divorce was finalized in 2022 and they were taking 2018 numbers. So I assume they did not have more recent numbers, or maybe the allegation was that Tyrese's income had dropped. But remember, when looking at child support, we're not just looking at the income you're currently having. It is imputed income or what you're able to earn. So that is, if Tyrese had made $2 million a year every year, and then got divorced, and all of a sudden makes $100,000 a year, a judge could impute his income based upon his past earnings. So if you're a brain surgeon and you quit your job as soon as you get hit with child support, the judge is not going to buy it. If you have the ability, if you've been making 150 and you have the ability to make 150, absent other circumstances such as disability, they call it voluntary underemployment or voluntary unemployment, you will be held to that same standard. So the child support calculator in Georgia and many states is based upon percentages. If we look at just the idea that if she makes $100,000 a year and he makes $1 million, then he makes more than 10 times, possibly 20 times her salary. Now, I understand that $100,000 isn't a little bit of money, but the calculator takes into consideration both parties' income, and the judge is allowed by statute to take in consideration other sources of wealth, which in this case could be the houses. But if you read the statute, gambling winnings can go in there. Other properties. So I don't know if that's how, because we don't have the documents, of course, I didn't review them, but based upon his salary and her salary, the judge said that he was able to pay $10,690 a month. And rather than that, he paid something like $2,000 something dollars per month, which is far less than what he was ordered. And I will say, honestly, it's probably not appropriate. I have, with regular people who certainly are not millionaires, seen child support that was in the $2,000. So I don't believe that's probably an appropriate number. And just thinking about some other recent child supports that have come out, again, didn't see the documents. Based upon those numbers, that's where the judge got the number of the $10,690. I would gather that the judge did not think the attempt. So 2,000 is 1/5 of his child support. That probably did not show good faith toward the judge. And that's probably why he hit him pretty hard. Understandably, he could have jailed him. And Fulton County just had a issue with an inmate that passed away due to allegedly some bed bites or bug bites. So he was not jailed. That is a possibility with contempt, although rare. But he was not jailed. The judge ordered him to pay a sizable amount of back child support. And based upon what we know in the media, that child support we assume is what he should have been paying, because what they didn't do was file an appeal after the order. I mean, now he has a contempt and they're talking about appeal, but that certainly was an option the day after August when he when he was calculated that he should pay $10,690 a month. He didn't appeal then.
Tiffany,
I want to jump right.
I was just about to say, I wanted to ask you a question. So, I know you've seen the social media posts, and you've seen, and I mean, we've all seen it, where people have been going back and forth about why someone should pay a certain amount, like you mentioned, a 10,000 versus a 2,000. Tiffany, why do you think that the public gets so enraged when they see these large child support amounts?
I think people think it doesn't take that much to raise a child. And on both sides, I read the comments on both sides. It's women, it's men who are not as sympathetic to Tyrese like you think they would be, because they see Tyrese as a celebrity. So they're thinking, hey, like you said, Attorney Reed, I'm paying $1,000, but I'm not Tyrese. I'm not in the Fast and the Furious. I wasn't in Transformers. I don't have an album, And so you have that, and then you have women like, well, I'm only getting 500. Why does she deserve 10,000? Child support is a very emotional thing. People on both sides feel a certain way because everybody has a story about somebody who went to jail for not paying child support, a deadbeat dad, or a mother who bought bundles with her child support and children weren't taken care of. Like, everybody has those outrageous stories. I think that one of the things that I wanted to kind of pivot the conversation to, and one of the things I see, is people think that child support is just kind of thrown on the father. The judge just got this number out of thin air. So I want to talk about a little bit about what happens in a hearing for child support. Like, what evidence, like, what are you showing? It's not just that the judge is saying, Tyrese, I think you could pay $10,000, or John Doe, I think you could pay $50,000. Like, it's actually a process that people don't understand, that documents were exchanged,
And I can add to that and explain what happens so that people kind of understand what typically is going to happen in a court case. But the court is going to, like I said earlier, they're going to look at the income of both parents. And a lot of times they're going to look at W-2s or paycheck stubs. They'll look at tax returns. It's really whatever your attorney is going to present for your side to document your income, whether it shows that your income was higher, your income was lower. The same thing happens for the other side. Their attorney is going to present some information to the judge. If they have income that can be verified by W-2s or paycheck stubs, tax returns, they're going to submit that. They also a lot of times go into your bank statements, because we have a lot of people who are self-employed. I want to say, I think the other side, being the mother, might be like a realtor or something like that. But if she's somebody that's self-employed, then the court is going to look beyond a paycheck stub or a W-2, because she probably won't have them, or 1099. They're going to look at your bank statements. And there's actually a calculator within the child support worksheet that will go ahead and tell you, you can kind of deduct business expenses and things like that. And it'll tell you what a salary should be for someone, who's bringing in that amount of money in their business. And the other thing about child support is it's an average of what you bring in on a monthly basis. So if you're somebody who kind of works for yourself, and let's say you work as a landscaper, and you make $100,000 a year as a landscaper, most people utilize landscapers probably from about March to maybe October, because they're planting, they're cutting, they're doing those sorts of things. But then during the winter months, November, December, January, February, landscapers may not be as busy. So on your good months, you might be bringing in $20,000 a month. I'm just giving a number. On your bad months, you might be bringing in 2 or 0. So it's an average of what you bring in monthly. But the court does look at different evidence submitted by the parties to be able to determine what income should be. So if the judge determined that he made $10,000, that the child support should be $10,000 a month, then that's what he looked at. And he probably considered whatever evidence Tyrese submitted of his of his income and what he thought her income should be, but also whatever evidence she presented of what her income is and what she thinks Tyrese should be. And then there's a calculator. So you plug those numbers in and the calculator tells you what the child support amount should be. And the judge has the ability to go up or down based upon what that number say. They also have the ability to give you sort of deductions or credits. So if you pay for the child's health insurance, you can get credit for that. If you have to pay for the travel, I'm assuming that both parents live in Atlanta, but what if one of them lives in California and one lives in Atlanta? Somebody's got to pay for the plane tickets. So the judge can give you credit for those. But there's also a deduction process for people who make either really, really high wages or really, really low wages. So again, we haven't seen the documents. We don't know what kind of credits or deductions were made. But whatever the case may be, the judge ordered it as $10,000 a month. And one thing to add about contempt is that the judge can't go back. So here in Georgia, if they ordered him to pay the $10,000 a month, or as Tiffany said, I think he had to pay about $160,000 lump sum payment. then that it is what it is. Either, as Attorney Reed said, you can appeal it, and who knows, he may have appealed it and he may have lost. But whatever that amount is, he owes it. He can't come back later and try to get that amount reduced. What the judge can do is modify on a modification. He, maybe Tyrese presents evidence, I can't work, or, in the pandemic, my movies dried up, or my voice doesn't work anymore, I can't sing, it limits my ability. Then the judge could say, going forward, Tyrese, you don't have to pay $10,000. Let's say the judge says you pay $5,000. And that's what you would do on a modification. But on a contempt, the judge doesn't go back and modify. The judge will say, this is what was ordered and you got to pay it.
And on the modification, it's the same they look at just like a divorce. So it's more than just you saying it, correct? You have to actually provide documents if you need to get your child support.
Yeah, modification would be something completely different. And I don't know, again, we don't know we haven't seen the case, so we don't know if a modification was something that the court even considered. Typically, if someone files contempt against you, you cannot counter them and say, well, I want it to be modified. Those kind of have to either be pled at the same time or they got to be in separate cases. But in this particular case, we definitely know that she came into court looking for contempt. And at least the ruling that they gave yesterday was that, from our understanding, is that he was held in contempt in terms of not paying the child support. And like was already mentioned, we don't know if he was ordered to pay attorney's fees, but there was an attorney's fees award. So, Attorney Reed, what do you think about attorney's fees? How are those awarded in cases?
That's a great question. Now, I'm of the belief that these are some attorney's fees from the original case. And the reason why is that in an earlier post, I believe it was in August, after he was first given, as the divorce was first analyzed, he claimed that she had racked up $500,000 in attorney's fees. Those are really sizable attorney's fees. But the reason why I think, and she also had two attorneys. His argument, and allegedly, and this is from what he says, was that she paid $7,500 to the first attorney, and then the next two attorneys she paid nothing to, and so he was made to pay that. Now, as we all know, whether or not she paid the attorney, the question is, can she afford to pay the attorney? And if she cannot afford to pay the attorney, the court would make him pay her attorney. In this case, he has sizable assets. There also was a special master that he was required to pay $17,000. Don't know what the special master was for. A special master generally is employed to make sure that the court's order is being followed. We don't know what it was for, but there was a special master inside of their case. So it's my belief that part of this $500,000 almost in attorney's fees was probably one, assessing his income. Because he's an actor, I'm thinking that maybe they would have had to hire specialty people, accountants, to figure out what are the royalties going forward. Like, he's in Transformers. Maybe Transformers makes a video game. Maybe he gets money from that. He's in Fast and Furious. I don't know if they're still making those. So I'm thinking they probably had to employ experts. But it's regular people certainly shouldn't have that level of attorney's fees, not that level, but attorney's fees, as far as the statute, they are up for grabs. The judge can assign, he has great latitude in assigning the attorney's fees as far as which party they fall on. I think the harder part was her finding an attorney who was willing to take that case on without getting paid for that length of time. So
I wanted to add this about attorney's fees just in general, is that attorney's fees are typically not awarded. So just because you filed a lawsuit, I know a lot of people put in that line that I want the other person to pay my attorney's fees. They typically, I would say, if I were to give a percentage, I'd say in 95% of cases, each party pays their own attorney's fees. But the law has very few circumstances where one party can be responsible for paying the other party's attorney's fees. Now, we have assumed that Tyrese was ordered to pay her attorney's fees because he made significantly more than she does. So there is a statute that allows that. But there are also other circumstances that allows for attorney's fees to be paid. And that could be if somebody prolongs a case, if you file something frivolous, meaning this could have been resolved in mediation 6 months ago, but now we're having a 3 or 4 day hearing and you're getting the same or even less results, that's another circumstances where attorney's fees can be awarded. And as I mentioned earlier, the award of attorney's fees could be as a penalty for contempt. So if the court finds that you are in contempt, they can order attorney's fees just because the person had to file it. So there are a whole bunch of reasons why the court awarded those attorney's fees. But I think the interesting thing, like you said, Attorney Reed, is that finding an attorney that's going to sit there and wait, because I don't know when she filed this case, but it's most attorneys, at least at our firm, we like to get paid up front, because we don't get paid based off of the guarantee of whether you win or lose. We get paid based off of the work we do. So most attorneys want to make sure that they get paid for the work that they do. And so they don't wait until the end. So,
and if I may also say that the judge has to then approve the attorney's fee. So if you wait to get paid and you say, hey, they owe me $10,000, you got to submit all that to the judge. And the judge has determined that your attorney's fees are reasonable. The judge could say, hey, Attorney Reed, Attorney Holloway, I know you think you did $10,000 with work. I don't think it's worth it. So instead of you getting the $10,000 that you have billed for, you can get $5,600. So that's another part of the attorney's fees. They're speculative. A judge, when she got attorney's fees, the judge looked at those attorney's fees, verified that they were in fact earned and that the amounts were reasonable.
Right.
One other thing, moving the conversation along to something that I think the reason why we're talking about this anyway, why we even know that Tyrese went to court yesterday, it's his videos on social media and some of his actions on social media, which the judge addressed yesterday, some of the things that he's done on social media. And so I want y'all to kind of talk about how social media can impact your case, even though you don't think it does. A lot of people think that, oh, these judges don't know about social media. I tell people these judges may not be on Instagram, but they have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews who say, hey, because, he's Uncle Judge to them. Hey, Uncle Judge, you were on Tyrese's live feed last night, or, I saw this post about you on Twitter. So let's just talk about the role of social media in your cases, even cases where you're not a celebrity. Attorney Holloway?
So what I've seen, I actually commented on one of Tyrese's posts. And the one I commented on was the one that came out while they were in the hearing. So there's a couple of things that are at play. Number one is that the conversations that you have with your attorney, whether they are in person, whether they're written in an email or a text message, whether it's a voicemail, or even in his case, it looked like a Post-it note. When you get your communications from your attorney about your case, they are privileged, which means that everything that's said between you and your attorney is confidential. You break that confidentiality when there's a third party involved. I always tell people this when I have them on the phone, even for consultations. When you invite third party or third parties into the conversation, that breaches your confidentiality. So when you do things, and I think he had posted a video about a conversation he had with his attorney. He said, my attorney told me that the judge said this, that breaches that confidentiality of that conversation. When you post online a photo of a Post-it note where I'm assuming the attorney wrote, because it said something, the amount needed to purge. And I've written comments like that to my clients. We may pass notes back and forth through a hearing. When you post that, you breach that confidentiality and you open up this box of, can anything that you guys have said now be discoverable? Meaning, can other people get into what the conversations were private conversations you had with your attorney? So that was kind of the first thing that, stuck out to me about the social media post. And then the second thing that stuck out to me about the social media post was that yesterday during the hearing, there was, like I said, the screenshot of the Post-it note. And there was someone who said they were on his social media team and they were kind of sending updates as the case was going on. If that was a photo of a Post-it note taken inside the courthouse or inside that courtroom, then you could be held in contempt of court, which is a little different than the contempt with the child support. But essentially what it means in that circumstance is most judges and most courtrooms say that you cannot record. You cannot take a photo. And Tiffany, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It was someone in the Young Thug
Yeah, I
YSL.
was going to mention that she live streamed the jury selection, and the judge sentenced her to jail. Now, they didn't take her, but she went to a holding cell. I'm sure she thought she was going to be in jail for 72 hours. So that is something that can happen.
Yeah, so for them to and if you're ever on a Zoom proceeding, TPO court, eviction dispossessory, which is basically evictions, they're usually a sign that says do not record. There's something in there that says do not record. When you're in the courthouse or in the courtroom, a lot of times they tell you to turn your phones off if you're not attorneys. They don't want you to be recording audio. They don't want you to be taking video or taking photos or anything like that. And you could be, like this lady was, tossed in the holding cell. So by him posting that, he put himself in danger of having even more penalties. So that was one of the reasons that I was like, y'all need to take this down, because this ain't, I mean, I understand you want to keep the public informed, but if somebody from the judge's staff sees it, then there could be some potential consequences for it. Those were, and then the other part about social media is those things can be used against you. So different statements you make, it's almost like, I've seen where people want, like, talk to the police. And they'll say, I don't want, they read their Miranda rights and they want to go speak to a lawyer, and they shut up. They don't want to speak to the police. It's almost the same thing in social media. Like, you have to shut up, because statements that you make, photos that you do, videos that you post, things that you like or repost could be used against you in a court of law. And someone can put forth that evidence to say this is your true intent. You may show, and I'll give you a really good example. Like in custody cases, we got people's, OnlyFans, folks, drinking, folks smoking around kids, acting the fool, arguing, cussing, fighting. Even when people say, I don't have money for child support, and then we see you living your best life in Tulum or, on vacation, that information, all I got to do is screenshot it or download it on my phone, and you won't know who I am because you don't know my screen name or anybody from my office, or even sometimes the other party. Your baby mama may send it to me of you on vacation with your new girlfriend. So when you get into court and say, I'm broken, I can't pay child support, and I could say, well, Your Honor, he had enough money to go to Dominican Republic for a week. And I got the video to prove it. And you tagged yourself and you tagged the location. Or if you're staying at a hotel that's $500-$600 a night, you tag the location. I can show it. So all of those things can be used against you. So I understand it's fun to post on social media, especially somebody like Tyrese, got 16 million followers. He seems to be very adamant about the child support issue, meaning like he wants to stand up for fathers' rights. He feels like the system is biased towards fathers and they need to fight back. He's willing to lend himself to that cause. And that's great. However, those are things you probably want to wait until your case is over. And you definitely don't want to be taking photos and texting them or videos or whatever while the case is actually going on, while you're in the courtroom.
And one thing to remember is, even though you might have blocked the opposing party, it's somebody on your news feed that is screenshotting. Just remember that. It's a friend of a friend that you befriended that you don't remember, somebody you went to high school with, her cut, like, you never know. Even though you blocked your party, the messages can still be screenshotted even if you delete them too, like, because the screenshot lasts forever. So once you put it out there, it's out there. And for anything, and that's not just in custody, that's just in life. They look at it for jobs, they look at it for just everything. Like, you shouldn't put everything on social media.
So, ladies, final words. What do you all think? Do you think that, ordering a father, even if it's, a famous celebrity, to pay $636,000 in a combination of back child support and attorney's fees, does this advance the culture or advance the family? Or do you all think that it's a detriment to society, or, it's unfair to fathers? Attorney Reed?
I'm going to say that I think there are several situations where it's unfair to fathers. I don't think that this is the one. I definitely think that I have, in my professional life, my personal life, have seen that fathers have an uphill battle. And I also don't believe that the child support calculator is 100% accurate. I certainly believe that, and I'd like to advance the cause where I'm representing a father, showing that he's putting lots and lots of time in. And I'd love if I get a judge who understands the time that it takes to earn that money. A really good father wants to spend that time with their child. As you may know, I've had a case where the father said, "Hey, I'm making this because I work 80 hours a week. I can't keep it up." And when he was unable to fulfill it, he went down and we were able to get his child support reduced to an amount where he would be awake, because he was not awake to spend time with his child. I don't feel that Tyrese is the case for that, but it is very important for any, I would say, non-custodial parent, because sometimes they're women too, or any non-custodial parent to have a strong advocate on their behalf. One, when it comes to showing income, and two, when it comes to showing that they want to be present. Because we can talk about the money, but it's also the presence that you give to your child that is immeasurable. That is immeasurable in amount of in time. I just don't. I guess my heart doesn't bleed for Tyrese. I'm sorry, but I certainly believe in having a strong advocate when it comes to representation, especially when we're talking about your kids and your money.
I never like to see cases where attorneys get more than the parties. I think that I understand the need for attorney's fees, but it does make me question that. I mean, they're getting double what she got for child support. And so that always gives me pause, because I do think, like you said, Attorney Reed, it's for the benefit of the child. But in this case, I feel like he just didn't follow the judge's order. And I feel like he was just really disrespectful about it. Like, I'm just not going to do it. And so how else can she get it if she doesn't incur attorney's fees? So it's like, what comes first? But in this particular case, unlike some of the men that we see that are struggling to pay, I just think this is just, I'm not going to do it. And to me, that makes me my heart not bleed for him. But I do have pause when attorneys are getting double what the child support amount is.
And I think for me, it's difficult because on one hand, you have a custodial parent, whether it's a mother or a father, who is with this child for the majority of the time. And they got to make sure that this child has a roof over their head, food in their mouth, clothes on their back. But child support is such a contentious issue, and it is such a divide where a lot of times it's men versus women. And I hate to see that, because at some point we come together to make these children, but when it's time to pay for them, we're on two opposite sides. And I mean, it gets really, really nasty. The other thing about this that I see, whether the custodial parent is a very high earner, like we assume Tyrese is, or a very low income earner, is that they want their child to have the bare minimum. So they may say something like, I know it only costs $200 or $300 to feed the child, and you may add in $50 for some clothes. And so I don't know why somebody would need more than $500 to raise a child per month. And that hurts my heart, because if a worksheet says that you're able to pay $10,000 a month and still have the majority of your income to do whatever, why should your child get just $500 a month? Why should it, if you can afford $10,000 a month, then your child should be in designer clothes, eating the best food, having the best experiences, going on trips and vacations, and to the aquarium, because that's expensive, Disney World, and all of these things. Yeah, it's the things that you probably would have provided if you and the mom were still together.
Yeah.
That's the part that really hurts my heart, is that when y'all break up, all of a sudden is, my child needs to have the bare minimum to get by, and you need to supplement the rest. Now, I will say, I know we're not talking about the legal part no more, but in Georgia, when they do issue child support, it's actually two amounts. It's what the non-custodial pays to the custodial parent, and what the custodial parent pays to themselves. So Tyrese may have been ordered to pay her $10,000 a month, but the court may say, ma'am, based off of your income, you got to pay $5,000 to yourself. So it's not a situation where he pays the $10,000 and she doesn't pay anything. There is a portion that they assess to her, and that becomes important because we're looking at $10,000 a month. But if you got somebody who's getting $1,000 a month, I always hear people say, or I see in the comments, I'm not trying to fund her lifestyle. I'm not trying to pay her bills and so that she can live her life off child support. And it's like nobody can support themselves off $1,000 a month. That's not even minimum wage in Georgia. And then you add a child to it. Of course, you can't even rent a place for $1,000 a month unless you're getting some sort of state assistance. So that's the part that I hate to see, is where a parent will say, basically dumb it down to the smallest amount possible and say, that's how much I think it costs to raise this child. So that's what I think I'm going to give you. And if you can't, and it's almost like make it work. And if you can't make it work, then you need to get a job. You need to get 2, 3, 4 jobs. You need to figure it out. And that's the part that I don't like. But on the flip side, I totally understand the situation of somebody who struggles to pay child support, because when child support is calculated here in Georgia, it's based off of your gross monthly income. So that's before taxes. So as somebody who makes a couple of $1 million, or even somebody who makes $100,000, if you make $100,000 a year, then the court is going to say you make about $8,000 or $9,000 a month. I can't do the math in my head. But you may have $10,000 worth of expenses. A lot of people are in debt. They got a car that they're paying a couple $100 for, car insurance. You might got other kids that you're paying child support for, credit cards, student loan, mortgage. So instead of, you're not really taking home $8,000 a month after taxes, you're probably taking home $6,000. And then when you look at all of your other stuff, you might have $2 to rub together at the end of the month. So I understand that the child support calculations are probably flawed in that sense, that it doesn't take into account a lot of your other bills. But on the flip side, I just think that the person who loses out is the child.
That's the sad part.
Yeah, whether it's you want to pay them the bare minimum and you want to see, I don't want to say you want to see them struggle, but we know the struggle is going to happen if you pay the bare minimum, especially if you're with somebody that doesn't have the capacity to kind of make it up. Or we're with someone who doesn't have the capacity to wake it up. So the child suffers there. Or on the flip side, like you were saying, Attorney Reed, with somebody working 80 hours a week, trying to make the money to pay for child support, then that means the time you spend with the child is reduced. So ultimately the child suffers. So I don't know what the solution is in this circumstance. But I think child support is definitely needed. But for the culture, it's tearing us apart. And it's really hurting our children.
It is.
It really is. Because just imagine, and we can end with this, people think children don't know what's going on, but they're fully aware of their parents and having a contentious, at this point, 4 or 5 years, they've been going back and forth trying to get divorced and doing child support. There's no way that this child has not been affected by it. It doesn't know about it. And even though she's young, that when she gets older, somebody's not going to show her a video of her dad, saying certain things about her mom. And so that's something to think about when you're going through this. Yes, it's contentious, but the child is who suffers usually.
Right. All right. Thank you, ladies. We have been the ladies of Atlanta Divorce and Custody Law Firm. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have some subjects you'd like us to talk about, anything in the news or anything else, just go ahead and send us a message. If you want to call us to talk about a legal case that you may have in the state of Georgia, our telephone number is 678-390-3503. Our offices are based here in Fayetteville, Georgia, which is Fayette County. However, we handle cases in most of the metro Atlanta counties. So again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you the next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.